Hi, everyone. So excited to be here, and especially with my wonderful panel of individuals who do a lot for a lot, especially when it comes to helping people. So, with that, we've got Charles Caldwell, Dave Snell, and Catherine Chadwick. Very consistent panel. The word of the day is technology. And I know it's starting to have more and more influence on more and more things. I love to hear what everybody has to say. And if you're in the audience, we really want to hear from you. Feel free to share your location or give us some feedback, and we'll follow through and try to give you some great ideas along with it. So, with that, I'll move it to Charles. Charles, great show last night for everybody. Charles has his show, which is from Hong Kong, 1 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Mountain, and even better, 10 p.m. Pacific. So, Charles, what's new and exciting, especially as it relates to technology?
Well, thanks very much again for having me back. And I'm excited about the conversation about technology. I think the thing for us to keep in mind is humanity first. A lot of people think that technology is intended to speed up the world, which it does do. But I think what we want to do is have it speed up the world so that we can slow down and that we can have a deeper connection with our fellow human beings, create space for authenticity, and not use technology to replace anything or diminish human connection. So that's my starting point on technology. But I'm calling in from Hong Kong, and this afternoon we did have a Horizon X network session where we talked about getting a job despite AI, because right now there's a battle going on, a technology battle going on with companies using AI, some of it to assist with recruiting in a good way, and some of it actually hurts recruiting. So a very large and significant technology company, which will remain nameless at the moment, used AI as a way of screening out candidates, but it was programmed by a group of individuals who lacked diversity in the programming, and therefore they programmed a bias into the AI, and of course the AI acted, garbage in, garbage out, and they were caught out. Not within the last 1 or 2 years with significant bias in the use of that technology. They've since then enhanced that tool and gotten rid of that bias. But it's an example of how AI and technology can get in the way. So there's this battle going on, because meanwhile candidates can use AI to polish up their resume and to help them make sure that their English is grammatically correct when doing cover letters and so on. But on the nasty side, there's also technology out there where someone can program an AI tool right before they go to bed, and when they wake up the next morning, they've applied for 100, 200, 300 jobs using AI, which really questions the commitment, company's commitment to a candidate. So there's good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points, Charles, because every benefit has a challenge to it and vice versa. And the key, I believe, is that sincerity, commitment, loyalty versus just playing and winning and playing more winning. And it really puts people who aren't capable of doing that at a disadvantage. We've got Leslie Flowers. Must be two of you, Leslie, because I don't know when you sleep, because I saw you when it was 1 a.m. on Charles's show last night, and you were kind enough to wake up early enough for this show, which is a little bit later on the East Coast. So thank you, Leslie. Look forward to having you back on another show. Appreciate the carousel you put out there. It's going to really help a lot of people get exposure to like-minded people doing the same thing. So congrats to Leslie. With that, we're moving on to Catherine.
Well, as you were talking, Charles, what came to mind was, the accurate representation of ourselves, right? And it's very easy to have, as you say, AI polish up, to get to the proper grammar and all of these things. But then when you actually talk to the person doesn't talk that way. I remember being in a scene study summer retreat, and my scene study partner was coming from another country, and she had sent me her headshot, and so I'm waiting for her by the elevator to show her where I had leased the rehearsal studio. And this girl walked by me, and then she turned around and she said, "Oh, Catherine." And I said, "Who are you?" She didn't look anything like her headshot. It was probably 20 years old, right? And I'm like, wow. So that's what came to mind as you were talking about, being accurate in your representation of yourself. And I think it's imperative to not just hand things off and misrepresent yourself.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Thank you, Catherine. Dave?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna build a little bit on what Charles was saying, because the first thing when I saw technology as the word of the day, I went back, and it's been many years since I've seen this movie or read anything by Carl Sagan, but the movie Contact. And it was very much about how technology advances so fast and our humanity is lost. And the connection. And we talk about connection week in and week out here, and technology has helped us. We've gotten to know each other on a more personal level, but there's something to be said for the human touch and the human connection physically, not just visually.
Right.
And I think that was very, very prescient. And when you met with Omar a couple of weeks ago, and you had your, face-to-face call and LinkedIn Live episode there, that's where technology, there's a quote from the movie. I used AI. I'll admit, I used it as Google and a little chat GPT to say what were some of the quotes from that movie and what were some of the themes, because it really has stuck with me for the last, gosh, that movie came out in the mid 90s, I think, late 90s. But one of the quotes by the theologist in the movie, played by Matthew McConaughey, was, "We've had thousands of years of evolution, but only about 100 years of technology." If we look at how technology really was stagnant in its progression for thousands of years, but in the last 100, 150 years, it's just exponentially growing. But his last part was, we're just not ready for it. And if we look at the way that technology from a policy perspective, policy always lags the technology. It always gets ahead of us when we're playing catch up, but personality and human connection is lost as we go along with it. And we've just explained a couple of examples where that's true. And we need to be very cognizant of those, that dynamic and interaction between technology and human interaction.
Yeah, those are excellent points and great references to Carl Sagan and a lot of visionaries who really didn't have as much to work with as we do as far as the future. And it's always going to be an opportunity and a challenge. I look to use technology more. I'm looking for more ways to use AI, not so much as a crutch, but as a tool.
Mhm.
And, you got to get into the game, just like when everybody got a cell phone, right? Whether you wanted to or not, you had to get one to stay current and relevant.
Right.
Just from a personal note, last night I went to my grandson's induction into the junior high school National Honor Society.
Nice.
I'm very proud. There's about 60 other kids with them. And what occurred to me was he is going to actually be around people after school and doing things together. And they're going to be doing volunteer work and service work and all this stuff. And they've got, it just gives you confidence and appreciation for what's going on in the world that is normal, right? Like schools and places like that, where the goal is, you do the Pledge of Allegiance and people respect each other. They got great ideas. So and he's in the fishing club and all this other stuff. The point I'm making is you have to force yourself to get around people to appreciate the value that they have, because people take other people for granted that they never will see. And just from Omar coming out here, we have a different relationship,
Right.
because we've justified each other as being real. and being interested in being with people, not just at people or by people. So we've got a lot of, and speaking of Omar, Omar's here today. Technology is innovation meets imagination and reshapes how we live, learn, and connect. Oh, wow, Charles, using AI to hire people. I heard of it. AI could hire the wrong person. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got Sheikh. Hopefully I said that properly. Awesome to see everyone. Awesome to have you today. Usman's here. I appreciate coming to the show and also commenting on my daily post. Nicole, another champion out there.
Mhm.
I see that she's helping people write books, and just amazed by her inspirational story and growth and how she helps so many people. So thank you for thinking about us today, Nicole. And Charles comes back with Humanity First. Technology should serve deeper connection and authenticity, not replace or diminish it. Great lead in. Back to you, Charles.
Yeah, thank you very much. So absolutely, Omar, AI is being used in hiring individuals, and just a couple minutes ago gave that example of how bias was built into the AI algorithm, which has since been fixed for that particular company. You can Google that, bias technology company, and it'll pop up that case study. But I think another way to look at technology is to really look at it as a tool of leverage and using resources to create the greatest output with the least amount of effort. That's what technology can provide for us. And I would agree with you, it's not a crutch, Don. For example, AI, it's not a crutch. It's actually a tool that you can use to enhance different aspects of your daily, weekly, monthly work. And technology is probably, at the moment, the technology that is available to us is probably the greatest form of leverage that's ever been created. It's a force multiplier for time, for money, for our voice. I mean, just look at what we're doing right now on LinkedIn, and for impact. And it allows one person to serve millions of people. And, we just look at what's happened on YouTube with people that have built up huge followings and had tremendous influence. And in what it would normally take people years to do, some people are able to accomplish in days or weeks or months, and able to automate the mundane and focus on the meaningful through the use and the leverage of technology. And there's no question about it, without even getting into the politics of it, the current president made a real focus on podcasts. And there's a lot of analysis on how much that individual got into the podcasts in a very, very raw way to connect with people, whereas his opponent was much more leery about technology and podcasts, and a lot of analysis on how that's had a significant impact on the outcome of that election. So there's, the world is definitely changing. So if people cannot see that, they really need to educate themselves on how technology is changing. A lot of people are worried about their jobs being replaced by AI. I don't think people's jobs are going to be replaced by AI. What's going to happen is people who are familiar with AI and use AI will replace the jobs of people that don't stay on top of the technology curve.
Yeah, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We've got Dean LeBay here. If you don't know Dean, you should. When I started the show with Kelly, Dean was in the audience almost every day for months and months and months. And I'm so proud and happy to see how well Dean has continued to progress from his situation to really being a spotlight for taking care of yourself and then moving forward against all odds. So thank you, Dean. On to Catherine.
It's interesting because as you gentlemen have been talking, it occurs to me that it's possible that only a small percentage of the population will actually keep up. Because of being intimidated by the rapidity of this advancement of the technology, and depending on it for some of the wrong reasons, that they're not going to be able to represent themselves accurately. They're not going to be able to keep up with how everything is moving, and with the mindset that AI is going to be replacing my job. And it's fascinating. The mindset piece of it on our part, on the humanity part, I think is critical to keep in mind.
Okay, I believe that. And on to Dave.
Where to go from here? I think that policy and how we incorporate technology into our lives is, like I said in the beginning, is always the lag. It's always the tail. It never is going to be the front end. But if we don't find a way to harness the technology appropriately, because with every good, there's an evil. And I see this, as an intelligence background, individual, someone who's worked in the intelligence community for many years, and seeing the way that technology can be used for both sides. It bothers me that we don't educate to understand technology in its positive and negative uses. The reason I say this is not to get political, but policy-wise, we have to be catching up, because people don't understand how something like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook can be used for nefarious means. And AI is going to play a big part in that. I'm just going to keep on that theme, because AI will be able to generate, what do I think this person will look like in the future? And maybe I need to look for who they are later for nefarious purposes. There's many criminal elements that want to use AI, and we need to have a policy and a criminal code that keeps up with the way technology is moving, is really my point.
Yeah, I think you make some great points and illustrate how one needs to really look at a new paradigm. We're looking at everything as a labor market, as to what has been, what is. Now, people may say, well, people will lose jobs. Well, they'll lose responsibilities that aren't really appreciated or justified, and they can gain new responsibilities. But the other aspect, if it is so productive and efficient, then our country and our economy should continue to improve, right? So a quality of life should go up because we're doing more for less. People should have more free time. And then people need to retool. I saw where what they call prompt engineering jobs start at $100,000 a year. And all you need to do, which may be a lot for some people, is understand how to do it. Because you need someone telling whatever AI is doing what to do, how you want it done, reviewing it and telling it to revise it. So instead of fighting it, join with it. And, learning is going to be essential. So when people aren't working, if they spend their time learning how to do things better, eventually they'll start earning something for that benefit. So it's how do we shift? And I think to your point, Dave, the key in the future is going to be how fast can we identify something and respond to it, right? And if you look at banks, they move trillions of dollars every day in stock markets. There's very little challenges to it. You'll get a few people that might grab and go, but most of the time, they're in milliseconds. And they're understanding with that kind of value at stake that, they need to build trust. And I think that's going to be a key element with any technology shift, is the trust in it and in yourself. And there will be people who hide and go into a corner and stay there. But it'll open up the field for everybody else who may not have got into the last big shift. And it's only going to continue to accelerate. We've got Nicole, who says, I don't like that idea of replace. We should be focusing on how to leverage AI to cut the unemployment rate. And I agree. It's going to be a factor of leadership, of messaging, of how do we get the right message to the right people so they can start doing the right things. Here's another one from Nicole. And the evil in tech advance is always human driven, for sure. I like Leslie comes back. I think, like the internet, it's gotten too far down the road to put in the proper limitations, and the car went well before the horse. Yeah, and there were still people who were blacksmiths who saw cars drive by and thought it was a fad, and other people start buying auto dealerships. So human nature will never change as fast as technology, and can never compete directly against it. So it's easier to join it than to fight it. So thank you all for those wonderful comments. And with that said, I forgot where I was. I think I'm into Charles. Okay.
Yeah, I think this, speaking of nefarious ways to use technology, I've often heard it said that if people are not paying for technology, then they are the product. So in that regards, the nefarious ways that technology can be used is actually quite subtle. For example, data privacy and cookies, and the fact that whenever we're on the internet using any form of AI, particularly if it's free, we're leaving what they call breadcrumbs, which are little, we're leaving tracks and traces of where we've been.
Mm-hmm.
And companies the fact that we're able to use so many services for free, it's not really being used for free. And some friends and colleagues of mine who've worked in very, very high circles in technology have said, if you're not paying for something, then chances are you are the product, and something's coming out of it. So that's a very subtle nefarious side, to build on what you were saying, Dave. But I think the other thing is we can look at it in terms of, are we going to master technology, or are we going to be mastered by it? And so obviously we're revealing in our discussion that it's a double-edged sword, and that technology can empower us or it can enslave us. And social media can connect us as a breed comparison, and to breed comparison, like likes, and all, always looking for more engagement and anxiety. Or it can be used as a way to consciously reach out to people and to connect with people and to help us to strategize how we want to have a better quality of life. And this means setting strict boundaries and using technology with intention, and also being willing to step away and say no to technology at the appropriate moments and have some boundaries. And right now, a lot of governments are looking at how old people should be before they're on social media. And the Australian government has implemented a rule that anybody under 16 can't be on social media. And currently in Hong Kong, our chief executive, John Lee, is commissioning a study for the exact same reason, to try to create some boundaries for young people around the use of technology.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, we do that with alcohol. We do that with a lot of other things that are harmful. We're just learning the harm. So the first generation had to show what it can do, and now we need to deal with that. So, Catherine.
Well, it's interesting talking about boundaries. That leads me to think of security, right? And when you think about all of the accounts that get hacked, and you wonder about, HIPAA, and how often is that violated? How secure is your health portal, with your healthcare, situation. And so I think that there is a lot of room for healthy skepticism about how it's being handled. And when you look at the incompetence of people that call themselves experts and professionals, and I'm not, blanketing everyone, but there are an awful lot of self-proclaimed experts and people that call themselves professional, but they don't act in a professional manner. And so we've got all of these people that are, playing in the sandbox. And so, what shovel are you picking up?
Great point. Dave?
Yeah, as we're going through here, it occurs to me that technology advances. I'm thinking back to the days when calculators were first coming into more popular use, and people said, "Oh, I won't need to know what the square root of 5 or 25 is because I'll just use my calculator," or think some bigger number, obviously. But a lot of times when I go back to the Carl Sagan point that is the lack of humanity, he made a point that we've become run by science and technology by people who don't understand science and technology, because it's taken away in some ways because we haven't set boundaries and we've allowed it to go forward. Our connection with knowledge, we think that we can just look it up, and the brain power isn't there anymore, in my opinion. People don't automatically do math, and I watch this with anytime I go to the store, someone has to think out how many pennies or dimes. It used to be natural, just go, well, if I give you 1801 on a $17.51 charge, you can just give me 50 cents back. People can't process that anymore.
Right.
No, it says I have to give you 49 cents and I'll give you your penny back also. It doesn't make sense. Technology just gets so far ahead of us that we've lost the connection with thinking, because technology's advanced so fast that we've allowed technology to run our lives. I go back to that earlier comment about policy and protection, and I think it leads into Catherine's comment about boundaries of when we allow technology to be used and when we have to force ourselves to think. I'm guilty of it personally. I got lazy. Last year, I started writing some articles and I used ChatGPT, and I let 90% of my article be ChatGPT, and that was lazy. That was dishonest, because I didn't put a boundary on myself to say, look, you need to think about what you're writing. And I see this with, well, we have to have technology in schools. Well, all we're doing is giving kids computers to do the work. They're not learning to think. And I saw that with several children that not children, but high schoolers, middle schoolers that I tutored for a little bit off and on. They didn't know how to go through the process if it wasn't on the computer. They weren't thinking. And that's where I go back to policy, humanity, and as Catherine pointed out, boundaries need to be set.
Yeah, the more you look at it, too many people are trying to swallow too much at one time. And you don't have to be the best, you just have to be better than the most. And I think by, and definition and interpretation is important. I use AI all the time, but I never tell AI, here's what I want to do it. I always feed it, well, here's the outline, here's the point, here's the priority.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can go off and research and recombine and then revise and revise. So no different than a typewriter could have been considered technology at the time it was invented. And somebody could say, well, you're not writing it by hand. You're letting a machine do it for you. I think that conversation has always been had. And things that are inevitable aren't up for discussion. It's like a steamroller. You don't want to get in front of it and try to stop it. You can get away from it and watch from the sidelines, or you can get behind it and follow it, but the best position is right on top of it and run it. So, it's a matter of control, and it's going to be a matter of necessity. And actually, the new adopters will be better than the people who want the old to come back. So we've got a couple more comments. Leslie says, whose version of right are we using? That's a good point. And that's always going to be a challenge, because there's always at least two sides now, and more than that with social media. Nicole comes back with, yep, not free, Charles Caldwell, a cost of privacy, or as Charles says, privacy. And then we've got Nicole, well said, charity, McDonald's, boundaries. Charles comes back with the technology, a double-edged sword. It can empower us or enslave us. And current technology is the greatest form of leverage ever created. It's a force multiplier for your time, your money, your voice, and your impact. And Nicole has, thank you, Dave Snell, for being honest here. I do not use ChatGPT to do any of my writing. That's a great virtue. And again, it's what works for everybody or anybody. So if this is more comfortable writing by hand and not using that, that's great. I always like another opinion though, and it's nice to send it to chat and say, what do you think? And whatever it comes back with, it makes you think of what they thought and maybe what you should rethink. And I think that's where the joint collaboration comes in, because it remembers everything you do with it, what you tell it, right? So now you got history and it starts to put their own ideas to that, which is important. Again, I guess we're back to Charles.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that if people are able to embrace technology, then this can really be their moment. The tools are there for people to use, and it's a question of whether or not they will use those tools to build their life, or, and the choice is really theirs. But it does remind me, and I think, Dave, you actually quoted this book maybe several sessions ago, maybe even about a month or 5 or 6 weeks ago, Future Shock by Alvin Toffler, which was a very, very interesting book written, I think, in the mid 70s. And he predicted that the accelerated pace of technological change would overwhelm people and lead to a psychological state of stress and disorientation. And I think that all of the events that are taking place on the planet right now have led us to a lot of people, not necessarily everyone, but a lot of people, to a psychological state of stress and disorientation. And we see that over and over and over again in well-being surveys that are out there. People have gone through the pandemic for as long as it was for your country. For some people, it was a year, 2 years, and for other countries, it was 4 years because the lockdowns were harsher, and etc. And then we've got all the conflict that's happening around the world. You've got polarization in politics, and all of this is contributing to people's psychological state. So well-being is a big, big issue, but it brings me back to, well, then how can you use technology as a way to slow down your life so that you have more time for well-being, more time to go out and get a forest bath, as the Japanese would say, by walking in nature and enjoying green, which is, we know from neuroscience, which is when the brain is most comfortable. So we really have to balance it out and focus on what we individually need in order to stay well while this technology is racing towards us, amongst all the other circumstances on the planet.
Yeah, I think you put that in great perspective. Thank you, Charles. Catherine?
The last poll I read, it said 1 in 8 people globally experience anxiety and stress, or some definition related to that. And in the US, it's 1 in 5. And so that certainly goes right along with what you're saying. And
I'm surprised that's not higher, actually.
Well, I think it might be. The poll was from last year. So it's not old, but I think it's likely higher at this point, because all you have to do is walk down the street and you can see it. The thing that also came to mind was the lure of the relationship with Chat GPT, because it does remember what you do, and things that you've researched before, so it will bring that up, so that invites more relationship, more familiarity with it. And it's interesting because I have this project called the Sunshine Quotient, and now chat often calls me Sunshine. And I'm like, this is hysterical, right? But you can see how it invites people to engage more. So that is going to be interesting also.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And, it may lend itself for people to leave their relationship with chat and build one with Gemini or another one who doesn't know you and doesn't have a background. So just like relationships that are working, you try to invest in them. Others, you try to replace them if you can.
Right.
So it's so dynamic, this discussion. Dave?
Yeah, Charles, I wrote down Future Shock. I have never read the book. I don't know that I quoted it, but I'm thoroughly interested now to go back and listen to it or read it. I think from what you're saying, Charles, what I find ironic about technology is it's supposed to make our lives easier, but what happens is the opposite. It's taken us away from the tree path, the walk back to nature, the slow down. It's instead of now it's made it easier to do things faster. So now you should be expected to do more is the irony of it. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think humanity is lost. It should be getting us back to nature. It should be allowing us the freedom to do more things, but it gets us stressed out. To Catherine's comment, about the numbers and the nervous, the anxious, the depression is exacerbated, ironically, because of technology that's there to make our lives easier. It's actually increased our workload because people expect more out of you now. And that's the double-edged sword in my mind.
Yeah, I think we're hitting on all the high notes today. And, I think the reason why a lot of people are anxious and have challenges like that is because in the past, people dealt with people. You knew who it was, you knew when it was, you had a certain degree of respect because you were with them. It's easier when you're online to disrespect somebody than to do it in person. And it was something that you could schedule. I'm going to meet with this person. I'm going to go talk to that group. Now you're just overwhelmed by activity. And you don't know who it is, really who it is. You know who they say they are. You don't know how they operate. And to Charles's point, a lot of people are casting a larger net than ever before. Usually you worked your neighborhood or your city. Now you're working the world. And you're working with all this support. So yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid because they don't understand. It's a lot of the messaging is based on supporting the fear out there, feeding that fear, not alleviating it. And I think there has to be some social media platform or some sort of technology that encourages quality of life, quality of positive situations. Because people are either going to adopt it, get defeated by it, or, not even enter it. And only 1 out of 3 are going to get to move up. And then what do you do with all these disenfranchised people who can operate? And even if they could, they're not happy doing it. So a lot of people's foundation has been ripped from underneath them. And now they've got to figure out how to swim. We've got Nicole coming back. It's not about easier, though. It's about accountability for using it responsibly, for sure. And thank you, Dow, for respecting me enough to allow me to express my views. Absolutely. And I think that's part of the solution. Getting more views, getting more perspectives, opening up the conversation. Too many people are taking it as rules or demands on them, as opposed to really being in the game. And I'm not against AI. I feel that it serves its purpose, but as a tool, and that'll change. When AI is always going to change, and it's going to change faster than we will. and it has so much information on so many people. It knows exactly where it needs to be when it needs to be. And then we got these huge companies that are now worth, I think NVIDIA is up to $4.3 trillion value. And I think Apple's over 3 trillion, and there's another company over 3 trillion. You know, that value is greater than the 5 biggest countries in the world's GDP. And that's a company selling chips, right? It's not a country. It didn't take thousands of years for its culture to develop or the people to assimilate. It's fascinating from a objective, detached viewpoint. And how you can elevate above it will also have a lot of impact on how successful you are with it. And then hopefully you can take a lot of people on the lifeboat with you. And that might be a show in itself, right? How to deal with AI. Charles.
Yeah, I would say that if people are getting stressed out by technology, that's a leadership problem. And it could be a leadership problem in companies where leaders and managers are setting an expectation that people work harder, work faster, and that they're using technology to get there, and that's going to stress people out. And that's a calibration issue. So good leaders and good managers will calibrate when they need to ease off and when they need to lean in. And if people are getting stressed out by technology, then they need to managers and leaders need to step off and not have people get stressed by technology, because it really is coming down to a choice. And if kids are getting stressed out about technology, then I think that that's a leadership moment for parents to be helping kids set boundaries and have a healthy relationship to technology. I don't think that technology actually creates the stress. It's our lack of strategy in using it that creates the stress. So we have to consciously design how we use technology and not be designed by the technology, and set empowering habits and boundaries to reclaim our focus and our state of well-being so that we're not getting stressed out by technology. And that's a human problem, not so much a technology problem.
Yeah, for sure. Catherine?
And to add to that also, it is a human issue, and it's all about making decisions and priorities. And what's so interesting is that so many folks don't really understand how they operate, as a body, mind, energy entity, as a part of this. And then you complicate that lack of awareness with the added technology. And I think that's where people really get left behind. And I think that exacerbates the mental health issues.
I believe it. Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to point out Leslie's comment about how managers need to know they have to have the emotional intelligence to, and the parents as well, to adapt to the technology so that it can pass that on to their subordinates or their children. It's become very easy for parents in particular to just hand off a tablet to a child and say, okay, instead of the TV, we're just staring outside, through generations, in the past, it's the tablet, and that's technology, and it's having an effect on our brain. So we're not really sure how to use it in the right way. So it stresses people out, because when the children don't get the tablet when they're upset or they're tired or cranky, then they get worse, and that stresses out the parents. So it's having the strategy, as Charles talked about, and knowing how to use technology at the right times and early enough or late enough, rather in a child's development. But I'm going to go back to the comment I made earlier too about we've become run by science and technology by people who don't know how to use it or understand it. Again, getting back to something in the Navy that really tickles my fancy on this one is it used to be that we trained people to fix things, technology in particular, new circuit boards or new capabilities that we used in the intelligence community in particular. Now it's just, oh, well, that board broke, I'll replace it with another one, and they'll throw out or send the other one off for repair to somebody else, instead of really understanding what the technology is and how it can be used or repaired on site. So we're just relying on the supply chain over time to fix things. It's not that we're not teaching technology itself. We're just teaching people how to use it. Does that make sense? The science behind it, the math, the things that go into making something work. We're just saying, well, it's broken, so I'll just buy a new one because someone else can do it because they've been trained. But if we really understand how a technology is created, we can be self-dependent, self-reliant, and not have to go out and buy just a brand new one. Oh, my lawnmower broke, I'll just buy a new one. No, I remember my dad would repair it until it just finally, there was a break that just couldn't be repaired. I don't think we see that anymore, and that's kind of a shame.
Yeah, I mean, hands-on used to be the only way to do things. What I see is, we're definitely dealing with a health crisis here, mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And maybe this should be part of the Health and Human Services Department, where, we have this whole controversy over vaccines. Can we vaccine our population against technology or support it, right? And have leadership share how to improve it. Schools themselves could improve their way they deal with it, because they throw more technology at kids, not less. I know my daughter can look at my grandson's activity day by day, turned in his report, didn't show up, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
In one way, it builds accountability because everybody knows what everybody's doing. But another way, it could be stress, right? Is if I don't turn in the paper, my mother's going to get a look at it. I'm going to get a talk about it. We need to come together. And I think another key dynamic is we're not working in a vacuum, right? China's going full blast with AI and technology and manufacturing. So is Europe. So is everybody around the world. And whoever can get there first will have an advantage over those who can't, and those who can balance their populations to make them smarter, better with it, right? You can have the best chip, but if you got a lot of people doing it for harm, you're better off not introducing it in your country or your culture. But who's going to listen, right? Because there's going to be people have an appetite for stuff. Want to see more stuff, want to hear more stuff. There's going to be an appetite to take advantage of people financially or otherwise. Mm-hmm. So you need to be more than just even-handed. You need to balance the scales in relationship to the whole population. And naturally, that impacts the rest of the people in that population. So, just a matter of time until the numbers become so obvious that we know the horse has already left the barn, and now what do we do next? We've got some more comments. Great comments today, by the way. Ask another human being what they think. How do we communicate if through Chat GPT we know everything? Leslie says, assuming the managers or leaders know how to manage their staff, and same with parents. I think we heard that one. That's right, Catherine. Our managers and leaders were never taught ET, and so cannot use it to manage staff anxiety. It's nice to want to set boundaries and to manage, yet what can we actually do to make that change? I think that's an excellent point, Leslie, because we're trying to tell people how to do it and we're not doing it. So a lot of it is do as I say, not as I do. And you've got to be the model for it. I'll just one quick personal note, in the, I'd say in the 90s when my kids were small, I just couldn't stand what was going on TV, with all the sitcoms and all the negative stuff. And at that point, I decided to turn the TV off. I brought in satellite TV and had like Animal Planet and Cooking Channel and History. And that way they could watch TV, but it was limited. Made a huge difference. They start reading, playing, doing other things, right? And instead of getting sucked into, I even told them, I said, we're all going to do it. I'm not going to watch anything you don't watch. And more importantly, I would never feed you something that I thought was unhealthy.
Right.
Why would I feed your brain something like that? And eventually, because everybody did it, made sense, everybody continued to do it, and no one really missed it. So you don't know how dependent you are on something until you leave it. And then you find out where you've been after you've left it. Charles.
Yeah, regarding the comment about managers and leaders, if they've been trained in emotional intelligence and so on, right now, the global role model for leadership is not great. And a couple of years ago, I think it looked better coming out of the pandemic, but also did not look great. But there was certainly an emphasis on empathetic leadership, and that emphasis has died down a little bit. But I would say it's probably well recognized amongst the human resource professionals that is a key trait that managers and leaders need to exhibit, and they need to get trained. And I don't think that the current polarized leadership model that we're seeing globally is going to last for too long. I think eventually it will fade. And regardless, people are going to be voting with their feet. We know that Generation Z is a much more fickle generation. We know that they are much more likely to jump jobs. That we know from the research that what's important to them is that they work for companies that are ethically responsible or environmentally responsible, and they'll tolerate a little bit, but they won't tolerate a lot. And eventually they'll vote for their feet. And so these trillion-dollar companies, if they don't treat their employees properly, or the million-dollar companies, if they don't treat their employees properly, those employees will vote with their feet and go a different way. To your comment about TV shows, I laughed, Donald, because there's a show, I don't even know if it's still going now, but it was out a couple of years ago, might be going into the 4th or 5th season now, called Outer Banks. And I guess it takes place down in the Keys somewhere in the United States. And it seemed to me that all these people did on this show was shout. And so I nicknamed the show Shouter Banks. And I would come home from work in the evening, and we used to have a rule that particularly during the pandemic, when a lot of the kids were all online all day, we would have a rule that we would, after dinner, we would have like a 60-90 minute break where everyone could just chill out, and then they would do a little bit of homework and then head to bed. So it was a little bit of a technology break, although we allowed TV during that time. So I would get home from meetings or from work, and I would look over at the TV and say, "Oh, you're watching Shouter Banks again," because it just seemed that all these people did in this dramatic series was shout. In Outer Banks and North Carolina. Okay, so Leslie, you live in Shouter Banks then? Okay, that explains everything, Leslie. Over to you, Catherine, I think.
That's really funny. Yeah, I grew up without TV for the most part. I was, I think, 4 or 5, and the TV went kaput, and my father said, "Good," and never got another one. And even he passed on at the age of 91, and he still did not have a television, right? He did get tangled up with radio, but no TV. What's interesting, when you were talking about things not being repaired, Dave, I've thought a lot about that for quite some time, because we always did want to fix things, and not only because we didn't want to spend the money, or it was perfectly good. It just needed a little something. And there was also the consideration of, if you throw it away, where's it going? Right? What's happening to it? What's happening with the recycling? What's happening with the landfills? And if we just keep throwing everything away, and all of this keeps piling up. So what are we doing to use AI to help not only make progress with their own health. But what about, the environmental health? What can we do about that? I mean, there's so many considerations that go with that, because when the environment is not healthy, we're not healthy. We're not healthy. The environment's not healthy. It's like this vicious cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Something to think about, maybe something to really think about. Dave?
Yeah, I think as Leslie pointed out, as I pointed out to Leslie, I'm of a different generation. I remember having a TV very early, um, and I've tried not to let it run my life. I have it on, during the day while I'm working. It's just something for background noise, but it definitely has an impact on us mentally and physically, socially, as technology is bound to do, as we've discussed over the last hour. The balance is knowing when technology is taking over and when we need to shut down for a little bit, to put it down. I was very proud of my daughter. I live in Florida now, and she's up in Virginia. And I tried getting in touch with her, and I said to my ex-wife, I said, well, why is she not answering? Oh, well, she doesn't have her phone with her. Sometimes she leaves it downstairs when she's upstairs studying or in her room or doing so. She's tried to disconnect a little bit. And I thought that was very, very proud moment as a father to say, look, she's recognizing the addictiveness of technology and the doom scrolling culture that we've created. She's not on any social media, to the best of my knowledge, I should say. She's kind of always told me she has no desire, but it's that balance that we need to find through time of when do we do the tree baths, as Charles pointed out, and go back to nature? When do we just go to the beach? When do we go to the mountains? Whatever it is, just nature and grounding ourselves. That's the real crux of what we need to understand is technology is great, but we're humans ultimately, and we need to get back to nature sometimes and get back to connection beyond just grabbing something and looking at a screen.
Yeah, well, I believe everything's going to accelerate faster than we ever imagined. I heard someone who took a Lyft or an Uber and then took a Waymo, which is a driverless vehicle, and the bill was only 25% of what the bill was for the person driving it, right? So all of a sudden, you're going to lose a lot of drivers, but you're going to pick up a lot of cost efficiencies. And companies aren't going to go back to the drivers. And that's happening right now. It's getting rolled out. And I think the other element is there should be more emphasis on trades, on having people learn how to fix things, creating more plumbers and carpenters and tradespeople. And I see there's some restaurants now who are rolling out robots for their restaurants. If a Burger King could be open 24/7 with no employees and everybody gets the same consistent experience, I don't think anybody's going to object, right? And if it saves you money, saves them money, and builds efficiency, why not? So, it's going to happen, and it is happening. How we view it, how we adjust to it, and then hopefully how we can master it and become friends with it and allies to it. Too many people are worried about what they lose instead of what they could gain. Some people should almost be thankful for something happening to throw them out of a situation they would never leave on their own.
That's right.
Right. And I think COVID did that for a lot of people. I remember when that happened, all the meeting at Starbucks and Panera's went out the window. Right? Zoom took over. And actually, after people went to Zoom, they didn't want to go back to Panera's when the all clear sign was up. So, I think change is something you have to always be aware of and be friends with, right? To fight it, to hate it, to wish it was like it used to be, well, that never has worked too well. Anyways, looks like we're top an hour. Last comments from Charles?
Yeah, I would just encourage people that technology is not hardware or software, it's context, and it alters what's possible for human beings, but we have to be cautious. Unless we're at the source of our relationship for technology, then we will become its effect. So we have to use it to elevate connection and to elevate truth, or get to the source of truth, and not use it to escape reality or to delegate our humanity.
Excellent. Catherine?
I have a question for you, Don. So if the robots are running Burger King, do they give change?
Do they get changed?
It changes how you work with your money, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of challenges, but you know, there's always going to be adaptability, right? On how they greet you. You know, you need to get a superior experience, not a replacement experience,
Yes.
right? And if it becomes, hey, I got in, got out, didn't have to deal with anything, it was cooked just exactly the way it was programmed to be,
Yep.
then you enjoy it, right? And so many times you don't want to be working with people who don't want to be working at what they're doing.
That's right.
Right? You know, they're there just to make a living. They're not there for the experience or the joy. Right? And it's almost better to unharness them and put them somewhere where they can build their full potential. Dave?
I'll just finish off with a common theme that we've had here is use technology where you can and need to, but always remember humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they will never be able to replace the experience of another human, right? Whether it's touch, whether it's conversation, whether it's company, right? Because we need to be with people who are like us, right? A robot, and even though now robots are getting to be very human-like, and I see where Elon created now a hand that is getting closer and closer to being human, right? How it picks things up, how it does stuff. So this is a day of dreaming and imagination and creativity. And I think because we did say it's a two-edged sword, I think we should start focusing more on the positive edge and not the fear and negative edge. So with that said, we got more comments I could have read today. You can always see them on the post that comes right after the show is over on LinkedIn. It offers comments. If you get an opportunity, check out Leslie's Carousel. You'll see so many other programs by so many fine people. Check out Charles's show I did last night. I'm very impressed. And you get a chance to see more of Charles than just on this show. So with that, thank you all very much. Go out, enjoy yourself. The world's only going to get better.
Yep.